contrary to what you see there on the screen, I'm not the CEO of the XO Group. Mike was quite surprised that I took over his title. Currently, I hold 3 titles, actually. I'm a contributor to CBS Sunday Morning. I am an editor-at-large at Ballantine Bantam Dell, where I help curate fashion and lifestyle books, including the memoirs of Donna Karan and Tommy Hilfiger. And I also host an interview series with fashion icons at the Metropolitan Museum of Art called The Atelier with Alina Cho. So it is open to the public. I do hope you'll come see me at some point when we do our next interview. Prior to that, I was a national correspondent for about a decade at CNN, where I covered everything from hurricanes to fires to floods to presidential elections to North Korea to the fashion runways. And before that, I was at ABC News and CNBC. I am joined by 3 highly accomplished people, 2 of whom are really, really close friends of mine, Mike Steib and Kemp Steib. It's not a coincidence that they have the same last name. They are indeed married. And Maureen Sullivan, directly to my right, who is the COO of Rent the Runway. Maureen, I want to start with you. I was in an Uber on my way down, and I was doing last-minute research, as I always do. And I saw that Fortune magazine, when it came out with its Fortune 500 list last year, said that only 6.4% of companies were led by female CEOs. That amounts to 32 women. So we have a long way to go in that regard. You have held top positions at Google, AOL, and now Rent the Runway. Talk a little bit about your career climb, and I know this is a multi-layered answer, but how'd you get there?
Yeah. So, our company, founded by 2 incredible women, Jenny Fleiss and Jen Hyman. Jen is our CEO as well as co-founder and my boss. I think we're really trying to change those stats. Those are obviously depressing stats, I think, for all of us to hear, given the scale of female talent in the workforce today. And our company is 73% female. So we feel like, we're a great example of what we hope companies in the future will look like. Our executive team, of our 9-member executive team, 7 are female. So, that was a huge reason why I went to Rent the Runway, to be really honest. I loved what we did as a business and what the offering was to our customers and really changing how women got dressed every day. But the opportunity to be a part of a truly female-led company, and where I knew that was going to be a part of our hiring decisions and our value set for all of time was really attractive to me.
I know that you said that it was also the first time you'd been in a company with sort of a dual parenting, dual income sort of situation at a very high level. I'm going to get to that in just a moment, but I want to, because that's what we call a tease in television. But I do want to get to my very good friend and landlord, Mike Steib, who is he'll talk about that, who is the CEO of the XO Group. Mike, you and Maureen were actually talk about allies, sponsors, and partners, longtime allies. You worked at Google together. You started your career at McKinsey. You've held top positions at NBC. Then sometime in your early to mid-30s, you became the CEO of Vente Privé, joined the XO Group in 2013 as president, and quickly became CEO in 2014. Talk a little bit about your career, and I know that you've always said that you've bet on talent over experience. Talk about that as well.
Thanks, Elena. I've been very fortunate in my career that people have bet on me ahead of me having proven I could do the job. In hindsight, I probably have never taken a job that I was fully qualified for. But it's worked out okay for the team, and it's worked out okay for me. In building teams and shaping my company, we bet on talent. We bet on people who we think have really high upside and who can do the job. And sitting on our executive team, we have an amazing chief marketing officer who's never been a public company executive before, an amazing chief financial officer who had never been a public company CEO before.
Talk about the XO Group for people who don't know what it is.
Oh, if you don't know, our largest property is the Knot. It's for planning weddings. So if you're engaged or thinking about it, think of us. We have a property called The Bump if you're trying to conceive, pregnant, or parenting new children. We we own a property called Gig Masters that is for planning parties. Everybody should have a party. We're here to help. And we have a new app that's really cool. It's called Lasting. It is a subscription app that gives on-demand marriage counseling and relationship counseling. It's new, but it's a really cool thing.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. We were talking a little bit about backstage about betting on talent over experience, but also I remember being at a conference a couple of years ago and seeing some wild statistic, like over 80% of millennials and Gen Zs want to be entrepreneurs, and so I was asking all of you whether you had trouble finding good young talent, and Kemp said no, absolutely not. Kemp Steib, also a very close friend of mine. I want to talk to you, but because you are the CEO of the Second Shift,
CFO.
A CFO. I'm sorry, CFO of the Second. I just gave you a promotion. Sorry, CFO of the Second Shift. I remember going through this with you because you had just left your cushy position at Allen & Company, where you had served as a top investment banker for 15 years. You actually weren't quite sure what you were going to do, and then you had this serendipitous run-in with a friend in the parking lot of Flywheel in East Hampton. So what happened?
I did. I had left Allen & Company. I was trying to figure out what my next plan was. In my work at Allen, I was fortunate to work with a lot of early stage companies. Allen is unique that way. We work with a lot of entrepreneurs when I was there. And I in particular worked with a lot of education companies. And so mission-driven startups and mission-driven entrepreneurs was something I was familiar with, I really admired, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next, and I ran into my good friend, Jenny Galuzzo, who is a co-founder of The Second Shift, in the parking lot, and I was lamenting what am I going to do next? And she said, just come help us, we don't have a finance person. And I said, sure, I'll come help. And I met our other co-founder, Gina Hadley, and they're amazing. And my idea was I'm just going to help while I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing. But I really dove in and got to understand the business and the opportunity.
And talk about that. Talk about the premise of The Second Shift, because I think that I see so many women in the audience. I think that a lot of women, especially women with children, might be interested to hear.
So The Second Shift, we have built a marketplace where we connect a vetted network of now nearly 1,800 professional women in marketing and finance with companies that are looking to work with amazing talent, largely in a non-traditional way. So in a consulting capacity, part-time capacity, project work. And the talent in our network is amazing. We have an average of 15 years of experience. These are people that have held very senior roles and for one reason or another have decided to work on a freelance basis rather than working full-time.
And just very quickly before I get back to Maureen, tell us about how you make your money, the structure.
Sure. The way the process works is our clients, which are companies, post jobs and projects on our network. We have a skills-based matching algorithm. Once a job is posted, the members in our network see it if they have the requisite skills, and the onus is on them to pitch themselves for that project. Once a member is selected, we charge a fee on top of the work that is paid to the member. So it's a pretty classic, tech-enabled marketplace. And it's great. We're really growing. We're psyched.
Great. And I want to talk to you in a second about how, because you're also in charge of fundraising and you just closed a big round of funding, and some of the interesting things you heard along the way as three women pitching a lot of roomfuls of men on why they should give you money. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But Maureen, I want to get back to you for just a second because I was so fascinated to hear about how this was the first time, this position, where you had entered a workspace that really was largely a dual parent working environment, and you talked about the empathy that comes as a result of that. Talk about the culture at Rent the Runway. a bit.
Me, feel very fortunate. I've worked at amazing companies. So I started my career at Google. I followed my boss, who's actually the same person that hired Mike, to Google, to AOL. And so
Not just anyone, Tim Armstrong,
Armstrong,
of
an
AOL.
incredible mentor who gave me incredible career opportunities, very similar to what Mike said, kind of before on paper, I was really qualified to do those things.
How did you cultivate that relationship? Because I think that a lot of people are thinking, well, listen, we're talking about sponsors, allies, partners. You don't get to the top alone. It does take a village. You have to really, really work at building your networks, or as Mike says, building your tribe, which we'll talk to him about in a moment. But how did you cultivate that relationship to the point where he trusted you and he wanted to bring you from Google to AOL?
I think in any business, high growth or turnaround or startup or highly scaled, there are always problems that are tangly messes that take someone really digging in and trying to unpack and fix it. And sometimes you don't have to be an exact expert, but you have to be able to really dig in and do the work and tackle that. And I think, for the majority of my career, where there's been a problem, I just dive in and start working. And I think sometimes people shy away. Those are the opportunities or the moments to really have an impact on a company, to kind of surge ahead and demonstrate that you can solve something. And
so now you're in this dual parent environment, and tell me how that's changed your outlook on work and life.
Yeah, as I mentioned, our executive team, 7 of our 9 are female. We're all mothers. One is about to become a mother any day. We've had 5 children on our executive team. 4 of us females have had children in the past 2 years. Our CTO, who's a male, had a daughter. So, and the majority of us our other half is working as well. And so I think there's just an empathy that comes along with, I have 3 children, they're relatively young, 5, 3, and 11 months. And I love my job. I love coming to work every day. I feel so lucky that I'm in a position that I'm passionate about what I'm doing, and it's easy for me to go to work. But there's a lot, as Kemp and Mike can attest to. Raising 2 awesome kids, it's a constant dance that we do. And so to be a part of a group of people that just understands that uniquely has been game-changing for me personally, around just the authenticity that I feel like how I can act at work, and also just the transparency that we tell and share with kind of our entire company around what that's really like. We have a very young company, and I know many of the women in our company are thinking about, what is this next phase if I want to be a parent and I'm going to be a part of a relationship where both of us are committed to continuing forward at the pace that we want to with our career? How practically am I going to make that work? And so I think, I feel like my opportunity and responsibility is to be as honest as possible on how that happens for me on a daily basis.
And Mike and Kemp, since Maureen touched on this, Mike, I know from the moment you wake up, you write down your goals for the day. You have the most tightly packed schedule of any person I know. How do you two, you're both in such high level positions, how do you two make it work?
This morning we were rushing 2 kids off to 2 different camps, and we had one gym visit to the gym and one hair blowout and all this stuff going on at one time. And
don't
Mike
divulge
remembered
the
the
secrets,
robotics
Mike.
T-shirt, and I forgot the robotics
sunscreen, there's
t-shirt.
sunscreen everywhere. Time and attention are your most precious resources in life, and especially when you have little kids. And we just work really hard to manage the calendar and the jobs that have to be done, and make sure that those things are happening at the right times. And
so it's true. It's true. You wake up and you write down a list of 3 goals that you want to accomplish for the day. Is that right?
Yes, you're making fun of me, but yes.
No, I'm not making fun of you. I think it's a great thing. And how steadfastly do you hold yourself to sort of accomplishing those 3 goals?
I think so.
Could they be, give me an example, big or small.
I believe sort of nighttime and morning routines are really, really fundamental to, if you have a packed schedule, and I bet a lot of people in this room have a packed schedule, there's not enough time to do everything that you want. So you have to get enough sleep. You have to get enough sleep. If you ever meet someone who says like, oh, I don't need 7.5, 8 hours of sleep, it's like when I meet someone who says they don't believe in evolution. The science is very clear. You need the sleep. Stop lying to yourself. Yeah. It's true. You have to. So getting a good night's sleep is really important. Exercise is really important. For every hour that you exercise, you live 9 hours longer. It's so important to managing your stress, making good decisions, all that stuff. So we've arranged our life so that you go to bed at the right time, you wake up at the right time, you exercise. And then what I do for the mornings is I just lay out the 3 things that correlate to my success personally. I take 10 seconds when I get out of bed to express one thing in my mind that I'm grateful for. I tell myself the 3 things that I've got to get done today. I double check the calendar and I wear the appropriate outfit, and then and the day can go. But it all happens, and like if you want to exercise, the morning is the time to make exercise happen. Somebody else always steals your evenings, but if you win the morning, no one can text you and bother you at 5:30 in the morning. There's nothing good on TV. You're not tempted to have a glass of wine, I hope. Like all those things that get in the way of life, no one can bother you in those early morning moments. So we win the mornings together, and we've chopped up the schedule. We both work out. We get the kids to the right place. Like I eat breakfast out of a napkin on my way to the subway, so there are some compromises, but we get it all in.
Well, I know you do because back to very quickly to the landlord portion of my comment at the top, Mike and Kemp and I.
Lena is a guest. We are not her.
Yes, I am a guest. It was a joke, but we both own homes on Long Island, and sometimes, most times in the summer, I try to rent my house for a month or 2. And during that period, I inevitably call Mike and Kemp and say, hey, do you mind if I shack up with you guys for the weekend? And so that's how I know, because when I come down bleary-eyed at 9 a.m. on a good day.
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
But Elena, you're very successful, and you get up whenever you want with like cucumbers on your eyes, and it's all fine. Like, you make it work without making.
I come down. They've been to get bagels. They've worked out. They've watched they've read all the news. It's unbelievable. I'm like, I'm just getting up. I just want to have my coffee, But Kemp, if you want to touch on how you guys make it work and manage your time together, that would be great. But also, I do want to get to, as I mentioned, you had just closed a round of funding. And what was it like as 3 women at the top of the food chain at your company going to people and asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars?
In general, our fundraising process was really great and successful, and we largely raise money from individuals, and those individuals are largely women, and that was intentional for a number of reasons. And many, many people got it, but this is a business that you have to understand our population, understand where people end up in their careers. And, we had one guy say, I don't know any women like that. I wouldn't hire my wife or her friends to do anything. So they didn't invest, but that's okay. We had we had a very young woman look at us and say, so do you mean like a bunch of Betty Drapers? And that's not it either. But in general, those were not the average. In general, we had great buy-in. We raised money from amazing people.
I won't disclose the amount, but they raised a lot of money, and that was largely because of Kemp. So congratulations. That was really great.
And there's, as Ellevate and this population know, there's now a lot of opportunities and a lot of really great institutions out there that are focused. I know Goldman just announced another piece of funding this week around funding female-led businesses, and that's amazing. And I hope they will all become our clients, because we are a great resource for small companies. Give
me a sense of who some of your biggest clients are, so this audience can understand.
Sure. We work with Microsoft. We work with Twitter. We work with a lot of private equity firms, IAC, J.Crew, you name it. So sort of companies big and small.
And your talent pool is incredible. I mean, you've got like Harvard MBAs, right? I mean,
absolutely. And while we're talking about policies that keep women in the workforce and why this is important, one huge opportunity we're focused on is a lot of companies, particularly like AppNexus in the tech sector, but others as well, have these amazing, generous parental leave policies where it's 6 months off, dads get it too, et cetera, but it's a real challenge for the talent team because these are young companies. So people that are having babies in their mid-30s are the senior people. And we have people that are senior enough and talented enough to go sit in that chair for 6 months. So the person who's out has somebody looking after the store and can come back and doesn't feel like somebody else took their job, doesn't feel like the work hasn't been focused on, and can take the time. And we think it's critical for retention, and it's a great opportunity for our members as well.
Mike, sorry to get back to your tightly packed schedule, but I found it fascinating because I read this article late last night about how you actually set aside time to think, to meet with staff members. I'm not sure if this is still the case, but you conduct a 12-part seminar for your employees on leadership skills. You wrote a book, which was at the top of the Amazon list for quite some time, called The Career Manifesto. Mentoring and coaching is a big part of what you do, right? What do you tell your employees?
The number one thing folks want to talk about in career coaching environments, mentoring environments, is how do they get where they want to go in their careers. And what I've had the pleasure of talking to a lot of really talented people and helping them walk through what's essentially 3 parts of career planning. The first is identifying what it is that's important to them and what they really want to achieve in their careers. The second is, scoping out over the next 10 or 20 years, what is a path to get to something that has a big impact on what's important to you. And then just a bunch of like the miscellaneous tips and tricks and hacks of how to get through things like struggling through running meetings effectively, communicating well with others, being more productive. All that stuff is laid out in my book. So if you enjoyed that riveting narrative before about my morning routine, wait till you get to the chapter on how to get through email quicker and how to organize your to-do list. These are the kinds of things that I think we all struggle with in our careers, and we run out of time and don't get to proactively invest in ourselves and our careers. And I coach folks, and I've tried to convey that through what I've written.
I love that you start every meeting 5 minutes late and you end 5 minutes early. What's the thinking behind that?
Nobody shows up on time, so they don't really have a choice. Well, so the thing is, I don't know, your schedules may look like this. Mine is like at 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. you're doing this. From 10 to 10:30 it's this. 10:30 to 11 it's this. 11 to 11:45 it's this. So everything is packed really tight, and no one schedules the 5 minutes to go to the bathroom, get a coffee, walk through the hall, say hello to someone, reply to a text. So just practically speaking, you can't actually start the meeting at 10 a.m. People don't walk in at 10. So we have a system for meetings. Mine is the first 5 minutes, we gossip. So, and we call it that. It's just 5 minutes for gossip. So if you're late, you miss the gossip.
Yeah. That's the best part.
But we can start the meeting. And at 10:05, like that meeting
Very
starts,
important.
boom. And then we say we end at 5 minutes before the end of the hour. But what it really does is it leaves you a little bit of a cushion so that you can say, okay, here's everything we discussed. What decisions did we make today? Because you know the feeling where you sit through a whole meeting and at the end someone says, well, we should take that offline, or well, we should follow up on that. And you're like, oh my God, I'm going to be in this meeting 51 more times this year. Like, you just want to say, okay, we got 5 minutes left. What did we decide? Who's in charge of it? When is it due?
Well, that's part of what you do. You establish clear goals for the meeting, and you want to get through those topics of conversation. And I know that you do this because you are the chairman of a nonprofit board that I also serve on, and I know because you're very, very good at this, probably much better than I am. Maureen, I want to ask you a little bit about. I believe I read somewhere that you said that EQ is just as important as IQ in achieving success. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, really having a sense of how other people are feeling and understanding what makes people tick. I know for the teams that I've run, I think really caring about people and not being afraid to make that a priority.
How does that manifest itself when you say really caring about people?
I mean,
Give me an example, maybe.
Example is it's all the little things that make you feel loved and appreciated at work. And I think we all spend so much of our time at work. Our team members, the good ones, feel like family members and how much they know about our life. And, I have found that it always comes down to the little details. girl on my team. It was her birthday yesterday. We did a surprise celebration for her. I wrote her a card. Like,
Show appreciation.
Yeah, that's who I want to be as a person in life, and especially with people that we are doing so much. Everyone's working so hard. We're building this company that we're so excited about and scaling and growing. And I think those are the things that people really remember. I think it drives loyalty, and it keeps people engaged if they feel like there's a group of people around them at the company that really know them, that really understand them, and really deeply care about them.
Along the lines of highlighting work and recognizing good work, you were sort of you spearheaded, and maybe this was even your idea, something called Makers when you were at AOL. Talk about that, and how gratifying was it for you to be involved with that, and why is it important to highlight the stories of women?
Makers started, a brilliant filmmaker, a woman named Dylan McGee, had done a ton of documentary films. She wanted to do a documentary film on Gloria Steinem. And Gloria Steinem, who is amazing and incredible in her way, said, "You're not allowed to do a documentary on me. People have told my story, everyone knows me." She empowered this woman, Dylan. "You have to go tell the thousands of stories of women who were groundbreakers in their field, and I can't sleep at night because I know this next generation of women do not know their stories. And it's a shame, and it's a tragedy, and we have to document and tell these stories." So the mission came from that, to really create a documentary film on the last 50 years of the women's movement. And we did that, a film called Makers. If you want to watch it, it's a 3-hour film. But I knew quite realistically, kind of growing up in the age of digital media, a lot of people were not going to watch that 3-hour film. So we did basically a documentary film in reverse. Every single thing that was in the documentary, as well as things that were going to be on the cutting room floor, we organized into 1, 2, 3-minute clips and created the largest library of kind of groundbreaking women's stories. And it was incredible. It's one of the best experiences of my professional career to be able to be a part of telling those stories.
Yeah, it's gratifying because these people, their stories otherwise might not be heard.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things is we obviously thought we were creating something for women, but the number of men that connected to these stories,
Really?
it was crazy. Our audience, we thought it would be 90% female would be the audience that was consuming these video clips.
And what did you find?
It was like 60-40. There was 40% of our audience was consistently men.
Wow.
And so to me, a great story is a great story, and it wasn't just for a female audience. It was making sure that these groundbreaking women, we were telling their story for posterity, for this broad of audience as possible.
Well, in sort of talking about highlighting the stories of women that haven't been told, I do want to talk a little bit about the MeToo movement, because clearly that's been on a lot of people's minds these days. And so, Mike, I want to begin with you. How has that changed the way you approach your job? Have you talked to your staff about it? Talk about that a little bit.
I think, Alina, bigger picture, I feel like the story of, one of the stories of the last 10 years or so in our country is a story of people in power taking advantage of their power, whether it's the financial crisis, the MeToo movement, or what led to the MeToo movement, the Trump administration, just so many examples of people in power who view that power as an excuse to take rather than a responsibility to take care of other people. And to me, it's the most important lesson of what's been going on here, and sort of first and foremost thing that I try to do as a leader is be the kind of leader who gives rather than takes. I try to set that expectation in our culture and recruit those kinds of people into our organization. And then, of course, there's just a bunch of important rules that you have to put in place to make sure that you're always protecting people in your organization, and we do all of that too. But these things are, I think they're so cultural, and the culture is set from the top with the kinds of people that you hire and the kinds of ethics that you convey as a leader.
Camp, Maureen, do you want to tackle this at all?
We're in our company, we're really female, and I think it's interesting kind of talking to people kind of across industries. There just has to be a different level of expectation, and I think the Me Too movement has opened up everyone's eyes. But, as leaders, it's just like, this is the expectation, and if anyone is abusing that or not meeting that, then you don't belong here, you know? And I think that that's how we've operated as a company. And I think more people just need to, you know, everyone can say that they support it and that they're behind it, but like walk the walk. When something happens that's questionable or not right, like, you know, make that tough call. And you know, it's zero tolerance around any behavior that just is not, you know, acceptable. And I think that's something that's been clear in our culture the entire way through. And you know, I think hopefully more and more companies are getting to that place.
It's also, it's worth noting that we all work at companies that are mostly women. Like half of my board of directors, majority of our management team, leadership team are women. It's, I mean, I don't know how to say this, but like.
How'd you get there?
So,
Yeah.
I'll be the guy who like turns the lights off for men on the way out. But like, honestly, in a culture that's mostly female, I think women are really empowered to speak out. But more importantly, like, women are not sexually harassing people. So there's a
Well, I'm sorry, what did you say?
women are not sexually harassing people, as best I can tell. There's a math game that is playing to the favor of our companies.
Yeah.
I want to sort of end the discussion before we get to the Q&A where we began, which was when we did a conference call, all of us, a couple of days ago, we were talking about sponsors and allies and partners, and yes, we've all had that in our career, otherwise we wouldn't be where we are, but this is also largely a room full of women, and we were talking about just sort of how to affect change and just the importance of betting on talent over experience and creating management teams that are comprised of women so that's really, at the end of the day, the game changer. And Maureen, you had a lot to say about that. That's really where it begins and ends, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way those metrics are going to change is if more and more leaders give women even bigger opportunities. And I think that that is something constant on my mind constantly as a leader, which is how do I create game-changing career opportunities for everyone at Rent the Runway? I want every individual person at our company to feel like their career trajectory is scaling with our growth. You know, as we're growing as a company, they feel like they're growing in their experience, and that to me is kind of what every leader, if you want to retain talent and if you want to fundamentally change these metrics, you have to be hyper-focused on
And
that.
I know that you've said you don't have to have all the answers before you take a new position. In fact, it's probably not a good idea if you do, right, Mike?
Yeah, and I think as females, we're perfectionists, not to overgeneralize, but you know, it's like, oh, I haven't done that. I mean, even I was sitting with two gals in my room, in my office yesterday, and we were talking about our influencer strategy, and we've been really digging in, and we've been talking to people that are doing things across the industry, and one of my leaders on my team said, well, you know, I really haven't done this, and I'm not really sure. And I said, no one's done this. It's like a brave new frontier. Like, you're just as qualified. Like, don't say that. Like, you're going to be great at doing this, and you're doing all the right things right now. You just went and talked to 10 people across different industries to find out how they're doing that. That's way more valuable to me than hiring someone who's done it at one place for 2 years. So, you know, it's just those, like, when you catch your colleagues saying stuff like that, call them out and say, what are you talking about? You're a rock star, and you just said 10 awesome ideas of how you would fix that. Go grab that job and take it. So,
That's
you know,
great.
I think just being mindful of those little interactions, we can all be that's not just coming from the top. We can do that for each other as colleagues.
Right, and Mike, I just before we open it up to Q&A very quickly, I read that you said that when you take a new position, because I know you famously say that you were given opportunities before you were really ready for them, but you said that you learned something and you unlearned something?
You do. It's often the thing that you were good at that gets you to one place that is no longer the thing that gets you to the next. It's really important. And Maureen's point is exactly right. I hear, you know, there's not enough female representation on boards of directors. And then you hear people who are recruiting for boards of directors say, well, you know, we're having a really hard time finding women. I'm like, really? Call me. I know amazing women. What are your requirements? They say, well, you know, they need to have prior public company board experience. Like, this is not going to work. That's a formula that ends with you having another old white guy saying things like, that dog don't hunt on the board meetings. Like, what are you doing? How about you say, you don't have to have prior public company board experience. You just have to be someone who would be a great director. Yeah. And then you can stuff your board with amazing talent that will be to the competitive advantage of your company.
I'm going to get to your questions, but one thing I have to mention very quickly is that I'm not sure if you saw this article in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago that interviewed British corporate bosses, asking them to explain why they didn't have more women in leadership positions. And here's a sampling of what they said. We have one woman already on the board.
Crazy.
There aren't that many women with the right credentials. And my personal favorite, all the good women have already been snapped up. With that, I'd like to open it up for questions. Any questions out there?
Thank you. Yes, we do have a couple questions coming in. The first one is for Maureen. For a company that has primarily all female employees, how important are the male allies to your business?
We do have some great men at our company who are incredible, so not to discount them. I think it's great. Like, there's not a huge emphasis on gender, despite how female we are. Our hiring criteria is you have to be really passionate about what we're doing, and we're disrupting how women get dressed every day, and our business is putting your closet in the cloud, and the reverse logistics and proprietary technology we've built to make that happen is no joke. So we really look for intellectual curiosity and people who are wildly passionate about what we're trying to do as a company. And there are some great men that fit that bill as well, we've found.
Thank you. The next question is from Kylie, and this is for Kemp. What is the best, as a woman trying to get in front of VCs for funding a project, what is the best way to do this?
The piece of advice that I give, first, part of the reason we were successful is we built a functioning, revenue-producing, real business with no money, with a couple $100,000 of our own and some close friends' money. And so when we went out, and this is not just for women, but I do think the bar is higher, we were able to say, look, this is what we're doing, it's working, we need money to scale. And that's a really good place to walk in with. And then, the other piece of advice is, as I said before, there's some incredible institutions, many of them that are new, that are investing and focused around investing in female entrepreneurs, and it's a good place to start. And then also use your network. If you know people who do investments, if you know people who run companies, people really want to help. They really want to help. They will help you. They will write you a small check at the beginning, or they will introduce you to somebody who will, or help you find the right lawyer, or whatever it is. So use your network effectively, and if you can show up with a real business, you're going to be way ahead of the game.
Thank you so much. And I really want to thank our panelists. We're out of time for